Mark here again. Today I had a fair bit of stuff that I'm sort of moving into and going through and explaining where we're at with West Australia, I suppose the status quo and all sorts of things, firearms and government and where we're at with bits and pieces. But I'd have to start with, I suppose, something that everyone should have heard of in one form or other, but rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. My condolences to his young wife and his two kids, and all the people that miss him terribly. And it is something that is, it should, if it doesn't matter, it should matter a lot to you. I'll talk about it a little bit more later on, but it's a very tragic thing, well, heinous thing that actually happened there for a man to be murdered, assassinated for having a different opinion, or more probably having a different opinion and being so effective at sharing it. Anyway, it does matter a lot, and it should be something that it comes into your thoughts in some form or other, because it is a very important thing, and it is a bit more of a statement than just one young man who was a very good and powerful young man who was gunned down in his prime. So beyond that, I suppose what I was going to talk about, the review and submissions that are going in to our government. I'll start with the understanding that everyone must understand this is not much more than window dressing. This is a stunt to a certain degree by the government. It's why they were quite willing to do this side of things, because they can put forward that to everyone that they had meaningful consultation and they made decisions out of their information as to what's going to suit us and suit everyone, so they can actually say that later on as to they did the right thing. They're going to, as I've been explained by many times by various politicians, they're going to make very little changes here. And you can sort of hear it in the undertones, but that doesn't mean it's not worth something. It's not very valuable to do. There's not very good submissions going in. But unless we, the people, the firearms owners in this case, or in actual fact it should be a lot more West Australians and a lot more of everyone, start holding our government to account and remembering what was said. And when they don't make adjustments to what they should do, we hold them to account. That's what needs to happen in some form or other. An impossible task in some senses, with an obtuse virtue signalling government in all the forms that our Labor government is. I don't know how we do that, but that's what we've got to keep at. And there's a few things I want to go through and into that. In those submissions and what you can see happening, there's a few overview points that I would say that I can say from watching the ones that I've watched. To start off with women and the domestic violence and all that side of things, very much the Labor playbook. Very much, we can call you we can call out create the divide between men and women, whether it's racism or whether it's the transphobic or whatever the things. A government that certainly goes down that road, and that will matter very much with this conversation as I go. But some of the absurd claims that were involved in those sort of situations, very much where Labor comes from, the likes of domestic violence, that it's all about men and all against women. And of course, anyone with half a brain knows that, and all the real statistics that are there, so that's quite different. I'm not going to get into that, but it is very much from both sides of the fence, and it's very much when you antagonize and frustrate and cause division in a society, that's one of the places it'll show up. It'll show up in domestic side of things. That also comes under financial pressures in the way of financial pressures or financial stress. That comes under political stress. That comes under all of those same divisions end up in the household. So not a good situation, but absolutely nothing to do with firearms. The only time it has to come in to do with firearms is when the police have, I would say, deliberately not done their job to cause a situation. That is what is on the records. So once again, a bit that was laid that way. Another thing that was mentioned in that first set of the review at the review board was talking about someone suggesting raising the age to 18 of where someone should be able to touch a firearm or use a firearm. An absurd suggestion, written or done and actually put forward, structured in a fashion. And I would also say, coming back to what we're looking at, is that this is window dressing. This is a show. This will have been talked about, and tactics they can use to actually put other things into the laws out of what they can put forward in this sort of situation, out of sensible professional suggestions. The likes of when a child should be able to touch a firearm. Well, if you go back to where our world comes from and what created this world that they all sit on their ivory towers in, basically kids in the country would be touching firearms in below 10 years old, with full supervision, with the right firearm, with all the bits and pieces, actually structuring a far more sensible a child or a young human that grows into actually understanding responsibility. And yes, putting something that has deadly force into the hands of a young child in the right supervision is a good thing for that brain. It lets it understand that if it does the right thing, then it's given responsibility. That's what creates better humans. The keeping the responsibility away and only letting it happen at 18, well, what you end up with is what we've got. Entitled children that don't know right or wrong, don't know. It's surprising some even have any traffic sense and some don't, through the fact that they're not given responsibility because we want to keep everything away from them. The opposite way of what it should be done and the way it was done, and the world, like I said, that created this world here. The other logic that is, I can see very much written in the likes of keeping people away from firearms till 18 is like a lot of things they're doing in fashions where they want to actually be able to keep that mind open to the indoctrination of our school systems and of our institutions, to where then you can actually stop them, and the real aim is to stop people from having firearms at all, or the desire to want firearms. Much more encourage the hate to firearms, which is what this review is about. And I'd say that's one of the things I'd come back to in general in that conversation, is all these laws. There's people now that are distracted by the getting their firearms relicensed or getting their firearm approval, or whatever the proper term is, their authority to be able to use a firearm. That same distraction is getting people to where they're happy. Oh, the police are doing a good thing for me because they helped me get this authority. Oh, it's good. It wasn't that hard. I went through this process for me and I got there. Distracted by the fact of all these rules that are coming just around the corner, whether it's 6 months from now or it's 12 months from now, you're very likely to have that same authority stripped from you, because they've set up a whole barrage of laws that you can trip over, and they will then take that authority away. And that's all hidden in the detail. That's not even getting into the Henry VIII clauses, where they can also just reset those boundaries a little bit, and then we can take that firearm as well. But the big detail, they actually go through it, is actually stopping people from getting into firearms, making it so expensive in so much, I think over $5,000 I've heard recently, to actually get into firearms. The training processes, the mental checks, the mental assessments, all these bits and pieces, it's not about being safety at all. This stuff here is about stopping people even starting the process. So very much their aim, very much understand that. And if you've got a firearm authority, okay, great, and it's good that you do that so you keep your firearms license. But please don't go back to sleep. Oh, it's all okay, it doesn't matter. Because the next round, unless we fight hard now, the next round, you're not going to be able to fight. Too many will have been silenced. So let's carry on with other things that were said in the submission. The likes of the conservation submission was an interesting one. There was the guys, Ralph Foley and Paul Cook, I think it was, that were there as conservation Western Australia, I think it is, but a few groups involved there. Paul spoke very well as to what he went through with things that are wrong. Probably I'd like to see a little bit more intensity to tell them stuff. I do understand, he understands that they're obviously, this is more, it's just lip service you're getting from them to a large degree, but did go through and explain a fair few of the details of the problems. That situation there was another 3 people at the table that all work for the government. They're all saying, oh yeah, the government, no, it's all good, it's all easy, working with the police is easy, it's all good. Like, okay, so we expected that the government departments would be fighting the government departments, did we? I really don't know why we have government departments there to pat each other on the back. These guys, the whatever conservation government department patting the police on the back for what they're doing, just an absurd situation. Or maybe exactly what they wanted. So then they can end up with, well, the government employees can have firearms, but the civilians, no, volunteers and civilians, no, we don't want them to have firearms. Of course, their actual goal. The next one I saw on that sort of stuff was the Indigenous side of things. Now, I know Aaron that was at the table there and speaking. I went through that process, and listen, there's definitely some very relevant details that come out of that and have some very valid points. There's something I did in conversation with Aaron. I did have prior and after that, that situation, that review. Something that did come across, I don't know how much it came across in the talks there, but it did come up as a real situation of the contradiction of our government. Now, largely, we all don't think they're going to care because it's not really about anything logical, but they have a situation where, now I'm going to get the departments wrong here, I can't remember them properly, but basically after the Native Title Act, I think it is, or Native Title Rights, basically where the Indigenous of Australia have the right to hunt their normal game that they would hunt, the normal cultural game that they, from their culture, that they would hunt. So they're entitled to do that. That's native title rights. That's in that world. But because of whether it's CALM or it's animal welfare or whatever the group is, there is a department that says, if you're going to hunt an animal, you must use the most humane way of hunting it. So it means that as much as spears and boomerangs and rocks and things like that were used a long time ago, that's now seen as cruel. So by looking after the animals, the Indigenous have to use firearms. Yes, they didn't have firearms 1,000 years ago, but they have to use firearms by the law of looking after the animals. So that's what they're doing. They're doing the right thing. Well, our police department stuck its beak in there and said, well, no, you have to do all these other things first. So if you can't do all these other things, then you've got to break one of those rules. You either can't hunt, which you under native title rights you can, or you've got to go and use a spear because we won't let you have a firearm. So there's a massive contradiction there. I would go one step further. I very much... there is, I suppose, there's the level of, if you fix all that for the Indigenous, then what do we live in an apartheid government where, the white Australians have different rights to the black Australians? Do we actually live in an apartheid country? Is that what we're saying? Because I, and a lot of people like me with 5 or 6 or 10 generations of white Australian in me, don't I have cultural rights as well? Or do my cultural rights belong in England or Germany or wherever it is? Is that where I should get my cultural rights? So I would think when there's, well, like I said, there's a massive mess in the way of rights, or as our government presumes, privileges, because of course they all consider themselves the elite, the kings and queens of our world, and they just give us privileges. It is quite a massive contradiction and worth fighting for. And keep in mind, they can tighten those screws anytime they want, or loosen them off to make themselves look good or to get around another problem. So that was something that certainly stood out as to very loud to me into that situation. And well done to Aaron and team of what they put forward. That was sound. It's a little annoying to watch the chairman of the review board being sort of so patronising in places and inconsistent. Well, it wasn't very much more of well, you're good guys and you're bad guys in the way of which you would. I won't get more into the things that I saw in that side of things, but a bit the nature of our Labor government in general. As for the other submission side of things, this week I haven't been up to that sort of stuff. I'm very interested to see what's actually happening there. A little interesting. I thought I read somewhere that the likes of the SSAA submission is not going to be broadcast. And something interesting I found out that, which actually Aaron mentioned to me, is you can actually rewrite the transcript afterwards. They send it to you and you rewrite it before it's released. So listen, it doesn't have a good smell to it to me, that if you're going to do this, have it public so we can all see what's going on, so there's no behind closed doors dealings that we've been dealing with for so long. But I don't know the other details of that, so I'll stop there. Overall, I'd say, once again, this is window dressing. This is to make them look good, to appear to have done the right thing. The likes of changing anything that matters at all is not going to happen with the status quo. It's certainly not going to happen when the firearms owners are going, oh, I've got my gun license, so I'm fine. That is what they want you to do. That's what they want you to think. Stop arguing, stop complaining, do what you do, happy about this. And when you've all gone back to sleep, then we'll rip the rug out from underneath you. Keep that in the forefront of your mind. But I suppose that's what I was going to talk about, and obviously I did a little bit with that side of things. I come back to the tragedy, the heinous act of a young man murdered because what is it? Because they disagree with him, because he was very good at putting his argument forward. I would say a large hunk of this lands on, now, whether you want to call it leftist or you want to call it mainstream or you call it whatever it is, but when it's okay to call everyone, particularly from the likes of the left of our government, from the likes of the left of our media, from the likes of the left of our institutions, be it universities or be it from our school teachers or be it from where it's okay to call the other side despicable things. Now, it's more obvious in the USA, for sure, but pretending that it's completely different is foolhardy. The likes of Canada, the likes of Britain, the likes of, or the UK, the likes of New Zealand, we have the same thing happening. It's okay to spit on the people that you don't like when it comes from the left. Now, the right do it a little bit, and I would now say, when I say left and right, there's people who get so cranky about this whole thing. Can't do this, you can't say this, that sort of stuff. Or liberals, not all right. And I agree that there's all sorts of different bits and pieces. But there is, we used to call themselves progressive, and I don't know what they are. I would say regressive, more to the point. When you're prepared to stop being civilized and start slagging the other person, start calling them things. In America, there's calling them Nazis, they're calling them fascists, calling them the Hitler, call in the way of talking about Trump, but also in talking about the aggression. And this is also about Christianity, something I never touch on. It's something that's obviously very controversial, but the likes of this, you have to stop and really put into the factor that Christianity is what built our Western world. To the largest degree, it's where the morals and everything's come from. So it's why the likes of the left are pushing back at it to a large degree. Now, like I said, I'd stress, I understand saying left and right gets confusing, but I suppose maybe you'd come up with a better definition for what we're talking about. So, and whether it's the extreme left or the leftist or wherever it is, I have certainly seen, one of the things when you talk to our government, talk to the politicians, they talk about even our conservatives, the likes of our liberal government over here, so the right side of our government over here. Talk to those people there. They say they've got a whole heap of left inside their government now. It's probably one of the things that is actually killing the liberal government over here, is this lefty side of things they're going with. But this same attitude that's okay to call the other people bad names, and the moment that you don't want mass immigration in your country, where you don't want the demographics or the religion or all the rules of your country chucked out because it's where it came from, you're a racist. The moment you don't want your kids to be indoctrinated to where potentially they're concerned at what gender they are, or where their sexuality is the main thing they're calling themselves. That's how they're living. You're not happy with that. Okay, well, you're a transphobic or you're a homophobic. This attack on all this sort of thing. And there's so much more it goes into. That doesn't come from the right. That doesn't come from Christians. But that is where this massive hate comes from. To see people celebrating the likes of a young man, the likes of Charlie Kirk's death, because they disagree with him, because they disagree with Christianity, or they disagree with his conservative views, they disagree with his views on transgender, they disagreed with these things, to kill him and to celebrate that's gone a long, long, long way in the wrong direction. And I'm sure in this situation, then Charlie's the type of person to put forward, to try and put forward the other cheek, to be better than that. I would say it's a little different. It sits in a little different spot than that. I would say We are fighting a guerrilla warfare, and we are standing here with our fixed bayonets, with them pointed up in the air, all lined up, and trying to fight it in the correct fashion. We're fighting with the high moral ground because we know we're not doing the wrong thing, and we're going to try and fight it doing the right thing. Now, I'm not saying we should stoop to that level. I'm not saying that we should start to murder people we disagree with by any means. That's the last thing I'm saying. Conversation, and I think what Charlie was doing in conversation and trying to, at the coalface, as I would call it, in university campuses, whether he was either supporting the Christian or conservatives there that feel they are voiceless in a lot of those institutions, or he is they're trying to wake up some of the people that have been indoctrinated and try and give them a logical reason to, wait a minute, hold the phone, this doesn't quite make sense, which a lot of our universities and professors over here are doing the same thing to people. You see people that do change. Now, I believe that discourse is definitely the way to do it, but in our conversation, in our dealing with the government and the political side of things and how we're doing that sort of stuff, for us to think that common sense and logic, right and wrong, are actually in play here, like we have a voice because we're right, and there are things from our property rights and the way they're standing on that sort of thing, from our cultural rights and they're standing on that sort of thing, to there's numerous legal things that we can try and do. But I'd have to say, the government runs the courts, and the courts work with the government. This is a big fight, and common sense isn't the only thing that's going to win here. We have to be able to take the gloves off. We have to start to fight a little bit of guerrilla warfare on the way back, in the fashion of think about what's going on. Think about how you put things forward. Be a little more forward about it. And for those people who are going quiet, and I've got my firearm license and I'm fine, or no, common sense is going to work this, or someone else is going to stand up for me, someone else is going to do this and I can be along, but I don't really want to because I'm frightened. I don't want to be targeted. There are people who didn't want to go to the rally because they had face recognition cameras there and I didn't want to be spotted and that sort of stuff. So if they see me, then I'll be on record. You're already on record. But here's the biggest thing that this sort of government works with. Yes, there's divide and conquer. There is that side of things here. But fear is what they're using. That's what they're using in every shape, form, fashion. And fear is their strength. They create fear in you. You do nothing, they win. So by being quiet and sitting back and hiding away, you're helping them. Do you really want to be helping them? Because this isn't going to stop. Wherever this goes, it isn't going to stop. It'd be wonderful to think that there's something massive. I don't think we want something massive coming, but it would be nice to think that it would be all over in a single blow. A white shining knight, or a knight in white shining armor who comes in here and blasts them to pieces and with his I don't know, his lightsaber, and sorts it all out. It's not going to happen. This happens out of us being, or us revolting, us standing up, us finding a way. And that may turn into, there's suggestions, I've made them before, I've heard them sort of come up, maybe it turns into we hit them where it hurts. Maybe there is a movement that says, okay, we're doing a stop work week. We're all going to take a week off. All employers, all small business, everyone's going to shut down. When you get ready for it, we're going to shut down. The thing that doesn't want to do that's government. The thing that doesn't want to hear that is government. Maybe that's what you do. I would think, and maybe it's lots of marches, and maybe there's a suggestion a long time ago about all the ovals, everything, we fill over the place and we wave our flags and say we don't like it. To be honest, I think we have to actually do something. These people don't care. They feel you're not worthy of their attention, and they'll just do what they have to do to carry on and get voted next time. And when they need to get voted, well, they'll go in and they'll offer a new swimming pool, or they'll put in a new reservoir, or they'll put in a new highway. They'll just spend some of your money to make themselves look good. So they're not really listening. They don't really care. Very obvious, particularly the likes of the Labor government, where they're not even allowed to vote for their constituents at all. No, the only time the constituents come into it is when they want to buy your vote. Other than that, they're lockstep with the puppet masters that are pulling their arms on the likes of Cook and the likes of Whitby, telling them what to say. I would say there needs to be something happening. But what I want to finish with This is not you waiting for a champion to tell you to do this. This has to come from you. This has to come from everyone that cares about Western Australia or our world in a large sense. This has to come from you. You have to be prepared to start a conversation to do this side of things. The likes of me, the likes of other people, whether that's Topher Field, that's the Benchrest Marsman, or that's Aussie Reviews, or that sort of stuff, that are sitting here talking to you, and some are talking more about this sort of stuff and some are talking less. These are people that can help promote your ideas, but stop asking them to do more or giving them a suggestion of how they can do more. It has to come from you, our organisation. Obviously, the Australian marches that happened recently, all in the right sort of place, exactly the right sort of thing that's actually happening. But it should also come with something's going to happen, because if it's just people on the street, they can ignore that and call it something else, or call you a racist, or call you something. Actually doing something. I do quite like the idea of shutting down, of stopping the money, of actually make it a point where this becomes a problem they have to deal with, because that's the net gain here. The real game here is create problems. If you create problems for the government that are large enough for them to have to react, then they need to do something. And there's the key. You get them to do something. Then all of a sudden your review goes with, wait a minute, we could do this. Oh, maybe we could start a disallowance. Or maybe Brad from the Greens could say, you know what? We could be the heroes here. We could do a disallowance on the firearms, and we could push back in this other place here. We could actually do these things. Then we're the heroes. Or maybe that's One Nation. Or maybe that's someone who can actually push to a point. They need the power to do it in our messed up, corrupt political system. So that's why the Greens have the advantage in this situation. But I don't know. This fight's not going to go away quickly. Maybe this does turn into next election. I don't like the thought of where firearms owners get to in that place. I think where our numbers will be very, very low, and no one's going to care at that stage. And that is should be a big warning to everyone. We all know what happens with history once they've disarmed the population. And yes, they're up to it. They're up to it nationally as well. For those people who say, oh, we're all fine over here, pay a little bit of attention to what's going with the National Firearms Registration, the agreement. Pay a little bit of attention to what's going on. There's things coming everywhere. Let's wake up. Let's start something. Let's do something. But this comes from, whether it's your group, your club, your bunch of mates, you come together with an idea, you get some energy into it, you ask the likes of the talking heads to promote what you're doing. That's going to work well. Stop waiting for that white knight. Do it. Be part of fixing this. The world is waking up. You can see it all over the place. Let's not be 10 years behind everybody, where we have to go through a Venezuelan process or whatever it is to find ourselves on the other side of it. Let's do something. Anyway, that's what I wanted to put forward today. It does get me pretty cranky in a fair few of these things, and I'm probably not saying all that I want to, but yeah, I hope there is a way forward, and it does come from you. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for checking in. We'll catch you next time.